A new episode of Let's Get Better. I am sorry that I had to skip a week last week, but work was piling up, and even this week I barely have time to make any new videos for the channel. But I will do my best, and things will be alright. I just have to work a little harder. So if there's not as much videos as you're used to, then you know why that is. Alright, but I went through the trouble to making a new video today, so I hope you will enjoy it. Today is the topic of backgrounds in paintings. It was requested a little while ago, but we first did the arms and the legs episodes. Anyway, this is going to be a fairly short one, but it will contain some tips and pointers on what you need to think about and look out for when you are painting a background, or when you're coming up with a background when you're painting. By the way, I will be using a lot of photos and pictures now, and most of them are not mine, but are images that I found on the internet. So credit goes to where credit is due, to the wonderful artists that made them, but I don't know all of them. Alright, so I know there's some Jason Chan photos, some Jamie Jones photos, James Ryman. There's some of my photos, and most of them I have no idea. Oh, and there's some Boogaroo, but he's been dead for a few hundred years, so I don't think he'll mind if I left him out. Anyway, let's get to it. Alright, okay, so there are a bunch of different backgrounds, and we're going to run through them quickly. There are, of course, the ones that are no backgrounds, you know, when this is mostly done in portraits and character art. Of course, this episode is about backgrounds, but I couldn't left this out because it is most of the time, if you choose the background color right, it will really add to your image. So that is definitely something that you can use to your advantage when you're painting certain subjects that don't necessarily require a very detailed background or a story or whatever. It can, even a plain background can really add character to a painting, and sometimes even story to a painting. So definitely something to keep in mind. Then there are, of course, the silhouetted backgrounds, or the vignetted backgrounds. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. You remember maybe these drawings from the Let's Get Better, the morning sketching episodes, and these can sometimes just really give it sort of like a stylized look. This is often used in the comic-y style that of painting and posters, and sometimes in still lifes, and prop work for concept art as well, sometimes, where they just paint a little bit of background or something of value, so you can just sort of like see in what kind of setting or lighting setting the object is painted, which can be really useful to communicate a certain design or idea. So that is definitely something that you can think about when you are painting or coming up with a painting, what kind of background you want to use. And sometimes even like the simplest sketches can really give it some extra character and a more finished look, when there's just like even a stupid bar like that, you know. And sometimes that's just, it works. So yeah, definitely look into that as well. And then there are of course the more simple backgrounds, and well, even though these are not simple, because this guy who painted it, I think it's Jamie Jones's work, is super awesome. If you have the time, just go and check it out, you know, after the video, of course. But yeah, his work is just is amazing. And simple backgrounds can be like, it's kind of lame that I put my own work underneath this awesome art, but just to show you how much of a simple background this actually is. It's pretty much just a gradient, you know, going from a little darker to a little lighter over here. It's something that that is very useful, and you see like how simple it is, how minimalistic it actually is. It is all done so well because this guy is so good at painting. But definitely something that you can think about as well when you're trying to communicate a character. It doesn't always have to be super complex. So Same as with this portrait, you know, it really adds. I mean, the colors over here that are coming back in the armor really gives it a more realistic look. You know, the darks that are over here as well, it's really well done, and it's fairly simple, so it's really cool. Another kind of type of background you often see in images are the detailed backgrounds. And the detailed backgrounds are, I think, what people most of the time think about when they're saying backgrounds, especially when the people that are trying to become concept artists or illustrators or whatnot. A detailed background, I mean, these are all Jason Chan's, and I think we can zoom in a little. As you can see how detailed everything is over here, how much stuff is going on, but it is all so well done that it is actually adding to the character. You know, it's not, it is grabbing a little bit of attention, but it's mostly just helping in the way the composition is set up and getting the focus on the character like that. It's yeah, this guy is so awesome. If you don't know him, which I think that's impossible, but definitely go and check him out. Jason Chan. It's he's really cool. And as you can see in the backgrounds as well, they're very well designed, but they're not trying to take away from the character. It's very much in harmony with it. The colors, you know, it's very much this coming over here. You know, it's something you have to think about when you are doing your characters as well, or when you're doing your backgrounds as well, is that, so to keep in mind, whenever you're painting something that requires a background, if your background is so large compared to what you're painting, you're pretty much just painting an environment painting. There needs to be like a balance in detail, which you can also see in the Jason Chan artworks over here. I think these are for League of Legends. There needs to be like a balance between the amount of detail that you're going to see in the background and that you're going to see in the character. If the subject of your painting is the character, then most of the detail needs to be in the character and not as much in the background. Sometimes people make the mistake that they actually have a character inside a landscape, and the landscape is actually most of the picture. So let's say if you would have this woman here, but the picture would, instead of this being this big, it would be like this big, and there's a whole thing going on here with the cathedral and whatnot, and that is barely like, has the amount of detail as this stuff, then it's going to be very much out of balance. I'm sure Jason Chan would be able to pull it off, but most people make that mistake that when they paint something, they end up putting a lot of detail in the character, even though it's maybe not the biggest subject in the actual image. So that is like a balance you have to learn to use in the right way. The most important thing is that the background that you're giving your image is that it complements the painting or the subject, and it's not taking away the viewer's attention. No, it's not a cry for attention. So that is definitely something you have to think about when you're putting up a background. So what are some mistakes that people tend to make is that sometimes you can make a background like we call it, or I call it, like a separation of the background and the subject, where sometimes people choose a background which is in tone or value is too strong compared to the subject they are painting. I quickly photoshopped these two, but as you can see, this still sort of works, but it's not as harmonious as this one. That is, yeah, like I said, that's a mistake that some people make sometimes, where they either make it too light or too dark, and what you create is that you almost get the sort of like a separation of the two things, as if it is like a as if it's like cut out from the background and then something else dropped behind it, and then that's that, you know. That's you see that with photo bashing sometimes, where it's not done really well. You get that idea where there's just like a background pasted in, or a sky just pasted in, and yeah, you kind of want to manipulate the photo. If you're doing that, manipulate it in a way that is actually starting to become more in harmony with the background, with the foreground. And sometimes it's also that people make their backgrounds a bit too busy. I will show you some examples of that right now, where, like, for example, this photo, this is the original photo, and this is a little bit of a Photoshop with a blurry out the sides. But as you can see, like, the subject in this case is the little ladder on the ground. But when you keep it like this, then this part is very much screaming for attention. And if you blur that out, it really just becomes the photo actually really just becomes about the ladder, which in this case is like what you want, I guess, instead of it having to be like just a shot of everything there. And this tells maybe a bit more of a story. Same as with this, no, not with this. Yeah, like these are two examples of, I'm not entirely sure who made these, but as you can see, what I'm trying to say with a busy background is that there's so much detail in the background, and maybe there's even more detail than in the painting itself. I think this is just a photo collage or something. Something didn't really go as it should, maybe. As you can see, there's detail everywhere. I mean, I can pretty much count the amount of grass and leaves and the trees, and when I then compare that amount of detail and busyness and texture to the actual subject, which is the tower, it doesn't hold up as well as it should, as well as the road, you know. So that is something you might want to try and avoid. If the subject is a tower, then try to put most detail and put most focus on the tower, you know, on the subject, because it makes for a better picture. It makes for a better composition, and the composition on this image is not too great as well, as it's in the middle of the middle, which is something you might want to try and avoid as well. And yeah, the same with this one. I mean, the concept is really cool, with the bridge and the towers and the lights and whatnot. But then there's so much going on here with very detailed clouds and something here, and I can pretty much see all the rock formations here. I can count the amount of bushes that's over here. I can see a bridge and reflections and a grass, and I can see a path, and you know, there's so much going on that it is actually taking away from the main concept, which is this really big and sort of like awesome mage tower with the nice arc and stuff like that. But because there's so much going on, it is really taking away from the actual subject of the painting, which it is all about. So I think that if you would like take this picture and you would sort of like paint this out, or you would like not really remove it, but just like, yeah, not make it as make it more suggestive, so the mind can fill it in itself, it will make for a much better picture. Because the mind has this, the brain and the mind has this awesome skill where it can just take something that is suggested and just make something out of it. You don't have to tell the viewer everything, if you know what I mean. You don't have to really show every piece of grass and stone and rubble and whatever. The mind can, if you can, which is a good skill, but if you can sort of like suggest that it's there, then the mind will fill it in, and it will actually make the picture look a lot better. And another mistake that people make is having too much of a hue shift or a value shift in a background. This is an image of me, and as you can see, there's these things over here. These are too dark, you know. It actually takes away from what is going over here and here, because these is almost as dark as this, you know, and that's not good. And this point as well. So if you would take it away, it will actually get the focus more here. I think this should have been lighted a little stronger. There should have been a bit more light, and maybe on him as well. But that is something that is like taking away from the people or from the viewer when you look at the image. Where if this is turned off again, if this is the original, where people would maybe start to look at these things, you know, which have no real impact on the image at all, instead of this one and this guy, you know. So that is that's a mistake, and that's like an example of how you should not do it. All right, and then there are of course ways how you should do it. I mean, by now you might be wondering like what makes a good background. Well, a background should try to complement the subject, and it should not be competing for the viewer's attention. It should be in harmony with the the color and the tone of the subject, and therefore sort of unites the two together. And that's pretty much it. Now sometimes you might struggle with not knowing what you need to paint in the background. Well, I mean, that can be hard, but if you would try to explain to yourself what or who you are painting or drawing, then it shouldn't be very hard to think of an environment like where this character is, you know. And if that doesn't work, you could always just try to keep it white, because that will sometimes work just as fine. But the best thing would be, especially with characters, if the background tells a little bit of the story behind the character. So anyway, I hope you learned a little bit of this. Maybe it's been a bit too chaotic. I'm sorry for that. Should have planned it out a little better. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them below, and I will gladly help you out or answer the questions if you need. I hope this was useful in some way, and perhaps you'll learn or realize something about your own work. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye.